In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to take a basic dominant 7 arpeggio like this and turn it into a killing line like this. Let's get into it. All right, so the first step is we need to know our 2-octave arpeggios for our dominant chords. We're going to do this over dominant. We're going to do this over D7. And you could think about this like take the A train, the D7, and take the A train, or maybe the bridge of rhythm changes and apply it to either of those. There's a lot of examples. So what we do, step 1, is we play our arpeggio. So that's our 1 octave. We do another octave, trying to keep in the same position. Now for this, I'm doing it around this 5th position, and I'm visualizing the chord shape of this D13. So I'm playing my arpeggio based around that. And we start off with that. So that's our first step. You want to know your arpeggios. Obviously, you're going to want to know that across the whole fretboard. And we'll get into that a little bit later, how to do that, how to practice that. After you have that, the second step, and now this is a specific recipe to make a line like the one I just demonstrated. There's obviously a lot of recipes, a lot of ways of doing this. These are a few ingredients that create a good sounding line. Different order of these ingredients and adding in different ingredients will give you a different result. So I'm not saying this is the only way to come up with a great line. So the second step is to add in a 2-note per string descending scale pattern. And so what we're doing for this one, since we have a D7, we're looking at D mixolydian, or notes from the G major scale. And when we do that, started off with our arpeggio, we're going to pull off and now do notes from G major or D mixolydian. And I get to pick those notes as long as it's only 2 per string. So on the second string, I'm going to do F sharp and E, since that's the 3rd and the 9th of the chord. Those are good notes. On the G string, I'm going to do D and C, since that's the root and the flat 7. And then on this D string, I'm going to do A and F sharp, since those are also in the chord, the 5th and the 3rd. And we'll just stop on the 3rd for this line, so it's not too long. We could do the framework all the way to the low 6th string, and that's how I tend to practice it. But for the sake of this line, it's really part of your creativity is deciding, making choices here about when you want to stop your arpeggio, stop your lines, start and stop these different ingredients we're throwing in there. So the line so far is this. Sounds pretty good already, but it's just a little bit basic, a little boring. So the next step we're going to do is throw in the 2 minor chord. The 2 chord in front of this 5 chord would be an A minor 7, as if it's a 2-5 to G. So A minor, D7 is the 2-5 that we're dealing with. And now I don't have to do this minor 2 sound in front of the 5. I can actually throw it anywhere in this D7 sound and it will work. The framework we're using here for this A minor 7, we're looking at A, C, E, G. So again, you're going to want to know your minor 7 arpeggios very comfortably across the whole fretboard to be able to apply this in different positions. And again, we'll show you how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I have my D7 arpeggio. Here I'm going to put in my A minor 7, back to the D7, and then the descending scale, ending on that 3rd. So we have all right, that's our 3rd step. So for this next step, I like to add in chromaticism, and a couple ways we can do that. The first being approaching the root of the chord with a half step. So we're going to leave this first D7 alone, but then the 2 chord, we're going to approach that root by a half step, meaning G sharp, A. And then for this next D7, we'll also approach it by a half step, so C sharp, D. So that part sounds like this. And the next thing we can do with chromaticism is do 4 descending chromatic notes. We have 2 options here for this line, and this is where you start to see there's options, and that is what creates different lines and your flavor of lines. So we have approach, approach. Now I go down chromatically. So from that C to that A, and then continue the scale pattern. That's option 1. The second one is, instead of doing our chromaticism here, we can do our chromaticism from this D all the way down to the B, and then continue. So that one would sound like this. Pull off, chromaticism. Now that second one is one that I like better in this instance, so we're going to go with that and continue using that chromaticism for the rest of this. Once you've added in chromaticism, the next step here is to add in some color notes. And these color tones are usually thought of as like extensions, and this would be your 9th, your 11, your sharp 11, your 13, any alter tones, depends on what the chord harmony is that you're dealing with. Because I'm thinking about this like that dominant 7, like 2-7, like from Take the A Train or the bridge of rhythm changes, we're going to deal with a sharp 11 sound. So I'm going to be adding in some G sharps and also focusing in on the 13th, which is the B. And what we do when we add in those color tones is we want to emphasize those on downbeat so it sounds more like it was intentional and less like a chromatic passing tone. So when we add in that sharp 11 and the 13th, we're going to add it in right at the top on those downbeats. And this is what we get. Those two spots. C to B, that B is the 13th. A to G sharp really emphasizes that sharp 11. So continuing like we did for the rest of that line. Now again, the line's getting really long, so what you can do here is if you're coming up with this line, you can always take your favorite parts. So say we just had one measure of D7 sharp 11. I don't need to play the whole arpeggio line. I could just start here. And that sounds great. We can take sections as we're developing this. It's better to have the full massive line and then decide which parts sound good, depending on what you're trying to fit it to and just to get it in your ear. All right, so that is adding in our color tones. We have a lot here. Just as a quick recap, we have our 2-octave arpeggios. We add in our descending scale pattern, 2 notes per string. Then we have our 2 minor 7 chord arpeggio added in. Then we have chromaticism. And then we have color tones. All right, we have one more step, but real quick, I want to mention that I just came out with this Master Arpeggios book. This is over 100 pages long. I'm going to give a discount code of 20% for the first 100 people who get it. So you want to really get on that. The link is in the description. And what this has is it has all of these arpeggios, major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, in a way that's actually useful for developing lines. So the big issue I have a lot of times with the way I see people putting out these books for practicing arpeggios, whether it's dominant, minor 7, major 7, is that it's very bland. It's like in each position, but it's just that. It's very, very basic. It doesn't have the building blocks that we have here with the scale pattern descending to start to get you into the mindset of developing your arpeggios as frameworks for your lines. Arpeggios by themselves can sound really basic. You need to get away from that, but it is important to have them practiced and have awareness of those arpeggios. So what I did in this book is for all keys, for all 5 positions, we have the arpeggios. And so I'm talking about your major 7, minor 7s, your dominant 7. I have a what I call master line. So it's a line that really shows you what is going on in the chord in whatever position you're in, uses a bunch of the different arpeggios, an ascending master line, a descending master line, and a framework for practicing all of these so that you can do this in a consistent way in as little as 15 minutes a day. So anyways, that whole ebook is in the description below. 20% off for the first 100 people. If you guys are familiar with my 60 master 251 lines, it works perfectly with that. You can practice your arpeggios as the framework and then practice the key associated with whatever key you're practicing for the master 251 lines. And together you get a great practice of fundamentals and then also actual lines for the master 251 line. So enough of that. We'll keep getting into this, but I just want to mention that. So the last step, and this is really the critical step, is we want to make sure we're removing So we have this massive eighth note line, and it's too much if we're honest. So we can start to take out some of these ideas, and that will give us shorter phrases, and it's more realistic to how you would actually improvise this, right? Right now we're kind of really composing this line, and it might seem like, okay, but how am I going to do that in an improvised setting? It's kind of ridiculous. So this is to get the sound of that chord in your ear and the fingering of it, and then those lines will start to come out naturally as you practice them. So a few spots we're going to remove notes. This removing of notes will also create syncopation. So it gives our line some better rhythm, and that also propels our line forward. The first one I want to take out is this first root of D7. It's killing me. So we're going to start on an upbeat with this F sharp. So we have 3, 4, 1. And then my next note B, I'm going to take that out. So our first part of our line, instead of all eighth notes, we have 1. And then from here, we're going to go to the A. So we're taking out our B. And then we do the rest of our line. Next week, what we're going to do is we're going to apply this same idea. We're going to dig in even deeper, and we're going to apply it to that bridge of our rhythm changes. So we're going to look at this with D7, G7, C7, F7, really make a huge line out of it all the way, and show you how we even reduce it more. How do we start to get these ideas from the line, break them up, and practice them so that this can come out more naturally? We're going to look at that next week. In the meantime, check out my video on Wes Montgomery arpeggios to get some inspiration, or the other video I had on arpeggios, What Others Don't Teach You, for some more information on how I practice arpeggios. In the meantime, make sure you grab that ebook below. Remember, only the first 100 people will get it. I'll see you next week, guys.